Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest edition of Meet the Creator picture books. So this month, we are in the month of March, I'm going to be talking to Fiona Carswell about her gorgeous picture book, which is called The Boy Who Loves to Lick the Wind. So good morning, Fiona. Nice to see you.
Morning, Bev. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Are you happy to give us a reading of this fantastic book?
Of course I am. Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
Lovely.
The boy next door loves to lick the wind. I used to watch him from my bedroom window, wondering what he was up to. So I asked his mum, and she said, "He's licking the wind. You should try it." And then she said, "Would you like to come to the beach with us? All the best winds are at the beach." The boy next door squeaks and whoops and bounces and flaps, and when he sees the sand and the sea, he rocks and rolls. He doesn't always speak with words. As soon as he's out of the car, he rushes to where the sand meets the sea, and he stands there and licks the wind. "You see, all the best winds are at the beach," says his mum. "Let's collect some shells," I say, but the boy next door just stares out to sea. He reaches down, picks up a stone, and launches it into the water. "Big splash," he laughs. So I look for ages until I find two smooth stones, the most perfect stones I can find. One is grey and one is brown. The boy next door grabs the grey one. "Gentle hands," his mum reminds him quietly. He hums loudly, staring at the stone, and then he flings it far out into the sea. "Snack time," says his mum, and we race to the picnic rug. "Oh, yum," I say, taking a sandwich. But the boy next door takes a bite of his sandwich and throws it into the sand, covering his ears, tears in his eyes. "It got a bit sandy," explains his mum. "Sand in his mouth makes his brain feel wobbly." She sits close to him and lets him brush his sandy fingers down her dress. Then she gives him a drink. I go and collect more stones, the smoothest stones I can find. I pile them up, and then I dig a little moat around my castle of stones. I've just finished when the boy next door comes running towards me, giggling and windmilling, grinning from ear to ear. He picks up the top stone and throws it far into the sea. Then I throw the next stone, not as far as he can, and he throws the one after that. We take turns throwing stones until my castle is gone. Then we jump and we spin and we yell into the wind, me and the boy next door at the beach. "Nearly time to go home," calls the boy next door's mum. She holds up her phone so he can see the screen. "5 more minutes," she tells him. "I've set the timer." So the boy next door and I run to where the big grey-blue sea laps onto the golden sand, and we dance through the waves, kicking and splashing. The phone timer beeps loudly, and the boy next door covers his ears and starts to cry. "Don't worry," says his mum. "He's just sad to leave the beach." It's hard to leave somewhere we love, isn't it? I nod. It is hard. We scurry back towards the car, chasing each other through the sand dunes. And then we stop. And the boy next door sticks out his tongue and licks the salty, swirling air. So do I, and it is the best feeling in the world. You should try it. The next day, we scamper into school. "We went to the beach and licked the wind together," I say, and I tell the story for both of us. My friend next door giggles and squeaks and sticks out his tongue as if he's licking a giant ice cream. "There," I say, "that's how we lick the wind. You should all try it." And we do.
Okay, so after that wonderful reading, my first question is, this is obviously your debut picture book, Fiona, and what I wanted to ask was, what is your day job, if you like, and did that prepare you for being a writer, and did you always want to write a book?
If we go back to, I always loved writing and reading and English literature, studied English literature at university many moons ago, and that brought me up to Scotland. I've never left Scotland since. Um, but my day job, which I absolutely love, is I'm a books and arts publicist. So I spend my days promoting other people's books, normally not children's books. I've done some children's projects, but normally it's books for adults. We also do, arts projects, festivals, literacy campaigns, all of these sort of things. So it's an absolutely great job, and I love it. And if I'm honest, I hadn't really thought about writing a book. I'd always assumed that I was always very happy promoting other people's, and still am. It was really when I had children myself, and perhaps the particular dynamic of our lives, the particular children that I've got, these ideas just started formulating. And I guess you sort of just absorb them by osmosis without even realizing. You suddenly realize that you've got this little bank of ideas. I guess where my day job has prepared me is I know the right people, so that's great. I knew who to speak to once I had the ideas, and that's been a huge help. B, I know how it works, so I guess from a publishing and publicity point of view, that's probably really really helpful, and I know how the process works. But it is strange being on the other side. Enjoyable, but sort of quite nicely strange.
So, what actually inspired this story? Was it things in your own life, or is it totally out of nowhere?
No, definitely things in my own life. So I have two boys, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. My 10-year-old is autistic, and my 7-year-old is neurotypical. So you'll know from the story, the boys in the story are not brothers, they're friends. But what inspired the story was that what I've discovered is a very unique dynamic that you often get between siblings, where one isn't neurotypical, and one is. Perhaps that's true, but sort of in wider disability terms as well. I don't know if it's just about neurodivergence, or actually if it's a wider, if you have a sibling with a disability and a sibling who has no disability. It's quite a unique rhythm and dynamic in our lives and their relationship. When I see relationships of other siblings, you realize how different it is, and yet how the same it is in lots of ways. So that really inspired the book, in the sense that I thought, can you imagine if children who are naturally understanding, naturally empathetic, and naturally sort of accepting, as we know, what if they had the same attitude that a sibling of an autistic child has, i.e., he knows no different. This is just how kids are. So one of my youngest boy, as his questions when we go to meet somebody new, is, oh, and do they have words? His assumption is that people may have words or they may not.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. So I wanted to try to explore that through a relationship that wasn't the relationship I knew, but looked a little bit similar.
And I noticed, I think in the end credits of the book, that you worked with the Autism Society on this as well.
I didn't work with them. No, what I've done is I've just recommended them, as I was asked to give some
Brilliant.
recommendations for where people could go. And the National Autistic Society is an amazing place to go if you need help, particularly, I would say, in those sort of what can be quite difficult, emotional, for some people quite dark months after diagnosis. You imagine that there's going to be this massive, or I did anyway, this massive net of support that sort of springs out Spider-Man like. Not the case. From all the people I know in that world, I've never heard that that's the case. And so the National Autistic Society is there as a great resource. So I was just sort of recommending them.
I must admit, I thought You Wrong's illustrations are just perfect. They wonderfully evocative of sunny summer beach days, and they're very joyous, aren't they? I particularly like the way that the water is portrayed in there. Did you have any say in who your illustrator was going to be, and were you as blown away by the pictures as I was?
I had no direct say, but the way it works with publishing is that your publisher, certainly at a debut book level, your publisher sort of pairs you up with an illustrator that they think would work. Now, obviously, my background's in publishing from the other side. I trust their instinct, and so I didn't know anything about you wrong to my absolute disgust. Once I got to know about her work, I should have known about her, and I didn't. The minute I looked at examples of her work online, I could see exactly why they'd wanted us to work together, and we got on brilliantly. We really, really ploughed through things very quickly. Now, I have no experience of doing picture books before, but Yurong and the book designer we were working with as well said it was in fact very quick, because we just kind of got on a roll. We just were in it, which was great, and we worked really closely. So I don't have, visually speaking, I do not have an artistic bone in my body. I am absolutely clueless. My drawing skills are very good for visual timetables, which is what my elder son uses. So I'm all about the stick people and Googling how to draw an outline of an aeroplane or a donkey or whatever it is. But I'm not an artist. So what I was doing was giving Yurong materials to work with to give her a sense of what was in my head. So the beach is obviously not a specific beach, but it's an amalgamation of lots of beaches we know around here. And there were little nods in the book to things like the uniform that the children wear. Our local children in our local schools are recognizing it as, oh, very much like their uniform. There are little nods in there to things that, my son used to carry around with him, or the way that his additional support needs worker, when he used to be in mainstream, the way she looks. There are little nods there to our lives. So I was sending Yurong on text, on email. We were texting each other at all times of day and night with pictures, little examples of things. And she would then come back with these amazing sketches. At that point, they were just sketches. And I was completely blown away. As someone who can draw a stick person alone, I was absolutely amazed. It was one of the best bits of the whole experience.
It's such a sunny book, isn't it? As soon as you open it, the summer beams out of it, which at this present time is very much appreciated, I've got to say.
Yeah.
So do you think that, in your experience, do you think autism is portrayed well in children's and young adult books? And are there any titles that you would particularly recommend where you've thought it is portrayed very well?
I think it's a mixed bag, like most things. The situation is definitely improving. In all things, we're beginning to see. It's a real cliche now, but we're really beginning to see get to a situation where children can see themselves and their very unique dynamic of whatever their family situation is, health-wise, economically, socially, in terms of the dynamics of the family. We're really getting to a point where every child can find themselves represented in some way. Yeah. And that's great. We're making great progress. What I found was that when my older boy currently doesn't read or write, but my younger boy is a voracious reader, and I was finding that I didn't have anything to sort of that reflected his life. Really, he loves to read all sorts of things, but when he was at a picture book level, he's now onto novels, but when he was at a picture book level, that I just thought, wouldn't it be amazing if there was something that we could chat about his brother in that context? So that's really where it came from as well. My problem with the children's books dealing with autism, the ones I found, there are lots of exceptions, but I found that there was too much aiming to teach neurodivergent children how to fit in a little bit better. Yeah. Those books are kindly meant. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that I wanted to do it from the other point of view. I didn't want it to be scientific. And a manual. There are plenty of those. I didn't want a sort of beginner's guide to, what I wanted to do was look at a story and have it simply that one of the characters in the story happens to be autistic. As simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more, because that's the whole feeling you get from the book. It's about celebrating your differences. It's not about changing our differences, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and about finding it's not just it is about acceptance and kindness and all of those things, but it's also about discovering fun. What the neurotypical boy discovers on the play date. Yes, he has to give of himself to. He gets worried when the autistic boy is upset. He gets concerned about what's going on. He's clearly finding it difficult at points, and that's helped along by the sort of the crucial figure of mum. But by the end, what he's discovered is actually, in the same way that the autistic boy throws the stone much further, because he's great at that. He teaches the other boy to lick the wind. The other boy is so excited to go and race back and tell his friends, no, okay, the autistic boy does not have the ability, the will, who knows which of those things, to tell the story in school. But the neurotypical boy is absolutely delighted to tell the story. So he's not just being kind and inclusive and accepting. He's had fun. He's found joy.
Yeah. And I think if I had to sum up the book in one word, I think it would be joyous. Because it's a very joyous book. And it's a great read. And because it is so fab, and I do love it, are you working on another one? What are you working on a next book?
Yes, we've got nothing confirmed yet, but I do have another script that's sort of been of interest for publishers, and a very, very different story. I won't give the game away, but a very different story. Again, another story for children. And I've got so many ideas, Bev. No time, but so many ideas. Just things pop into your head, a situation or a little phrase. I remember, even with licking the wind, I remember vividly being on a local beach. My kids were very young at the time, probably, I don't know, 2 and 5 or something. And I remember my elder lad sticking his tongue out. And I remember thinking at that point, if I ever wrote a book, which seemed crazy, if I ever wrote a book, I'd call it something to do with licking the wind. So these little, it's not, sometimes it's a situation, sometimes it's a phrase, and you just sort of bank it in that bit of your brain that you might get to one day down the road.
Thank you so much, Fiona, for your time today. And we'll be looking out for what you write next.
Well, thank you for having me, Bev. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our March middle grade edition of Meet the Creator. And I am very chuffed today to be talking to the legend that is Justin Somper about his new series of books. Lovely to see you here, Justin. Thank you for making time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for calling me a legend. That's exciting.
Well, come on, you are. You are. Are you happy to start us off with a reading? That would be wonderful, Justin.
I would love to start you off with a reading. I'm going to read to you a little bit from chapter 2 of New Kid on Deck.
Yeah.
The boy stood on the burning deck. At least it was easy to imagine that the deck was burning, as the setting sun turned the light from pale gold to the deep orange of flames. He was alone on the deck of the old Scavenger. It was a small sailing ship which had seen better days. Nowadays, it was mostly used to trawl for any bits and pieces washed into the shallows. The stuff nobody wanted anymore, like him. The boy had a pair of binoculars pressed tight against his eyes. He was watching the arrival of the fine pirate ships in the distant harbour. Seeing a flicker of movement, he raised the binoculars to see the sprawl of buildings that crept up the hill and people racing down it. Even through his binoculars, they looked like ants. He felt rough hands grab him by his collar, giving him a start. He'd been watching the harbour and the hills so intently, he hadn't heard the telltale footsteps, but now he could identify his attacker from his rotten breath alone. And as his binoculars fell, he found himself looking into a red face with angry eyes and a largely toothless mouth. I thought we agreed you'd stay below decks until I give you the all clear. The boy's eyes narrowed. I was bored. We've been travelling for so long, and I know every inch of that cabin. Not that there are many inches to get to know. The man spat, something yellowish-green dripping slowly down his blistered lips to the deck below, and then shook his head. You ungrateful so-and-so. There's many a lad of your age and position in life who'd be mighty thankful for a cabin to call his own and fish scale broth for his supper. A cabin barely a metre from port to starboard. It's more like a dog cage. As for your vile... But before he could finish, he was grabbed roughly again, this time one hand gripping his collar, the other tugging his left ear. In this painful position, he was dragged over to the very edge of the foredeck. He knew there was no point in struggling. This thug was 3 times his size and packed with muscle. The muscled thug yanked the boy up and over the edge of the deck, so that he now seemed to be flying over the side. He felt queasy, and not for the first time that night. Was this how it was going to end? Dropped into the icy water in the darkening night, having to swim for it? He wasn't the strongest swimmer. He wasn't the strongest anything. For a moment, the boy froze in midair and was floating above the ocean. Then his eyes locked on the churning waters below, and he felt a familiar taste rise up from his guts. Bile. He felt his insides heave and his body twist. Not again, cried the voice at his side, as the boy puked up the last remains of food in his stomach. Disgusting, exclaimed the man, quickly dropping him down on the deck. The boy fell in a heap, noticing with a flicker of pleasure the spatter of porridge-like globs on the man's hefty boots. I've had it with you, the man said, marching over to grab a bucket of water. As far as I'm concerned, you can swim to the Academy Harbour and take your chances with the bull sharks. I'm pulling up anchor and shipping out. No, the boy spoke with such power that it stopped the man in his tracks. He simply stood there, bucket poised in midair, eyes and mouth wide open. No, the boy repeated. You were paid a good amount to take me to the Pirate Academy, and that's exactly what you're going to do.
Perfect place to stop. Thank you very much. That's really set the scene well. So, of course, New Kid on Deck is set 5 years before the Vampirates adventures begin. Was it fun going back into that universe? And is this going to be a standalone, or are we looking at another series?
I'll answer your second question first, but I can come back to that. We're looking at a series. Book 1 obviously has just come out. Book 2 is coming out in July, when I'm going to be over in the UK doing school events and events all around the country, maybe the odd festival in the summer. And I'm literally about to start book 3. And book 3 will be published sometime spring 2025.
Yeah.
So there's at least 3. There could be more if this is a huge hit, please, everybody. Going back to your first question, it was enormous fun, if a little bit terrifying, going back to this story world. I suppose I'd had some inklings. I mean, I've had this idea for quite a long time, because obviously the Pirate Academy features in Vampirates. It comes into the second book, Tide of Terror. So we've seen the Academy, and we've seen Jacoby and Jasmine and Commodore Quo and some of the other characters before. We know them quite well. When UClan reissued my Vampirates books in 2020, 2021, I went back into the Vampirates world then, and I wrote a bonus story for each of those books. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a good litmus test for me, because I was surprised how easy it felt and how nice it felt to be back with those characters and back in that world, even though quite a bit of distance had elapsed. And then I think the experience post-COVID of going back into UK schools and introducing the next generation, I guess, to Vampirates, I I could just see, they responded with the same excitement that children always have to this idea.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, there's been a bit of a theme. I've gone into primary schools, let's say, to talk to years 5 and year 6, and the teachers have wanted the year 4s to come in as well. And I felt, there's some dark stuff in Vampires. There's some complicated stuff. It's not really fair either to the younger kids or to the older kids, actually. So I think for quite a long time, there was this idea, could I do something piratical that had my kind of flavour to it, but was a little bit simpler and would work for younger readers?
Yeah, definitely. Because that's how it reads. It reads as though, for a slightly younger audience, definitely. And especially with T.O. Scaffer's amazing illustrations. Aren't they cool? They are just so wonderful.
And it's super exciting for me because I've never had integrated illustrations in one of my books before. So, to start having that interplay with T.O. He's great. I mean, he's wonderful with the characters, and then he brings out the humor, but there's also, the emotional moment in book 1 of Neo arriving in the harbor that I was just reading about, and also scary bits, like when we see the League of True Pirates with their rather disconcerting masks.
Yes, and I think Tio's portrayed those masks so well. So well. They're quite uncanny, aren't they? It's quite eerie looking at that illustration. Really did strike me. I think one of the things that I noticed that I loved so much about New Kid on Deck and also about Vampires is that you've got such wonderful, strong female characters. And I love that because, there's this common misconception that pirates are boys. Pirates are boys. It's as simple as that. And of course, that's not the case at all. Is that something that you consciously wanted to get in there, or did it just evolve that way?
I think it's both innate and conscious.
Yeah.
I've grown up with strong women. I have, my mum was an amazing inspiration. I have 2 big sisters. I've worked with really strong women, having worked in children's publishing, there often hasn't been another guy in the office. Yeah. So, and I have a lot of women friends. I think when I had the idea for Vampirates and I started, the idea for Vampirates, as I have said about 1,000 times, if not more, came from the word Vampirates. It didn't come from me thinking I would mesh the 2 things together. It was the word that started me off. So then I went off and I researched vampire myth and pirate history to see if I could find a way to make this concrete world from the 2 banks of history and myth. And I got frustrated researching pirate history at the lack of women pirates. I mean, there are some that we're familiar with, and there are some that other writers have done brilliant jobs with, Anne Bonny and Mary Read. For me, the problem with those 2 characters from history is that they had to dress up as men to be on the pirate ship. I didn't want that. Grace O'Malley, also very inspiring. But it was really important to me with Vampires. I wanted the women characters either to be standing sort of shoulder to shoulder with the male characters, or frankly, to be somewhat ahead of them. And so that's why ultimately I decided, that was one of the main reasons I decided to set it in the future, so that I could totally mix it up.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be like asking you who your favourite child is. I know this, but have you got a favourite character from the series?
From the new series?
Yeah, from the new series.
Yeah, that is pretty much like asking me who's my favourite child, because obviously I have within, the big 3, as I call them, Jacoby, Jasmine, and Neo.
Yeah.
We see the story from their points of view. So it's very hard for me to choose between the 3 of them. I guess I do have a bit of an affection for Jacoby. I feel sometimes he's just the worst of me, or kind of me at my worst. And it's sort of therapeutic writing him in that way. There's some lovely stuff in book 2, if I say so myself, where he just gets things really badly wrong, and I kind of love him. I love him for that.
So, okay, lastly, I'm guessing what you're working on next is more Pirate Academy books, but are there other things in the pipeline?
Well, as you would imagine, getting a series like this up and running is pretty intense. So in the immediate future, it's all about Pirate Academy. I have got another project that I worked on before Pirate Academy, and I'm now doing some more work on, which is a little bit older. I mean, it's still middle grade, but it's kind of more the vampires end of middle grade. So once some time opens up in the Pirate Academy schedule, I want to go back to that. And beyond that, I mean, I would love to go back fully into the world of vampires, but I think that's a ways away at the moment.
Oh, that's tantalizing. That is. I think that would be very popular indeed. Well, and I do think actually with New Kid on Deck, I think there is a little bit of a gap in the market for those slightly younger middle grade. And I think this is perfectly pitched for that, because we have had a wealth of amazing middle grade stuff coming out over the last few years, but it does tend to be more for the, as you say, year 5 up into year 6. So I think this is a great introduction for them younger down.
Thank you. I and we have worked really hard on this. I think initially when I was thinking about it for a younger audience, I was thinking it was going to be resolutely upbeat and sort of quite simple. But I've had this amazing opportunity. My editor on this series is Anne McNeil, who, you know, she's a legend. She's a true publishing legend. And she's the editor, as you probably know, of all of Cressida Cow's How to Train Your Dragon books. And, you know, I sat down with Anne about 18 months ago, plotting out the first book and thinking about the story arcs and stuff. And, you know, she said to me, it's too comfortable. You know, you're protecting your characters. We need jeopardy. We need danger. These kids need to be fearful about everything. And I think I was a bit resistant to that initially, because I had seen this as kind of my light, bright piece of writing, you know, moving out of some challenging times. But I knew she was right. And so I just lent into it, and I lent into my own feelings of fear and anxiety. And I think the book is all the more authentic for that.
Okay, well, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was a joy from start to finish, and I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the series. And I normally only try and read the first one in each series, and I didn't manage that with Vampires, and I don't think I'm going to manage that this time. I'm going to want to read on. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us, and we look forward to seeing you in the summer, Justin.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks so much.
Thank you.